Good morning and welcome to First Coast Connect. I'm Ann Schindler. Today, he's witnessed every execution in modern Florida history, and he's gotten a lot busier lately. We meet the journalist known as Dr. Death. Then, more political drama at JEA. We get a breakdown from Florida Times Union reporter David Bauerlein after fresh allegations last week of cronyism and political interference at the beleaguered utility. And from living through segregation to leading in education, we talked to Betty Burney on the eve of her One Jacks Humanitarian Award. Join the conversation. Give us a call on air at 904-549-2937 or head to firstcoastconnect.org, where you can find all the ways you can connect with us and also sign up for the new First Coast Connect daily newsletter. Stick around. We'll be back right after the news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump delivers his State of the Union address tomorrow night. NPR's Domenico Montanaro reports that, according to a new NPR PBS News Marist poll, Americans are doubtful of the U.S. political system.
Roughly two-thirds of the more than 1,400 respondents polled say the system of checks and balances in the country just isn't working. That comes as President Trump has spent the better part of his first year in office trying to consolidate power. An even higher 78% say they see a serious threat to democracy. That includes 9 in 10 Democrats, 8 in 10 independents, and even 61% of Republicans. Of course, what they see as those threats in many cases is very different. Other polling has found that Democrats and independents are concerned about the backsliding of liberal democracy in the country, while many Republicans believe voting systems are not as strong as they should be. That's an idea that President Trump has pushed to explain away his 2020 presidential election loss, despite evidence to the contrary. Domenico Montanaro, NPR News, Washington.
President Trump is again complaining online this morning about the U.S. Supreme Court and its opinion last week overturning his massive tariffs. He was furious about the decision. Over the weekend, Trump said he would use a different legal authority to impose 15% global tariffs, but these are more cumbersome to apply, and Trump will need to seek approval from Congress if he wants to get them to stick. Meanwhile, China's Ministry of Commerce says it's making a full assessment of the court's tariff ruling. NPR's Jennifer Pack has more from Shanghai.
China's Ministry of Commerce has urged Washington to lift its, quote, unilateral tariffs on its trading partners. Meanwhile, Chinese exporters to the U.S. are cautiously optimistic about the tariff ruling. Shoe manufacturer James Gao, based in southern China, says the news is good, but...
From my side, I don't really know what this change exactly means.
Not sure how it'll be enforced, he says, and not sure what happens next. Already, President Trump has announced other ways of levying tariffs. It's not clear how this affects the current pause on higher duties between the U.S. and China and the upcoming talks between the two leaders. Jennifer Pack, NPR News, Shanghai.
Blizzard warnings are still posted from eastern Maryland up to part of Maine's border with Canada. A nor'easter is slamming the eastern seaboard this morning. National Weather Service meteorologist Cody Snell says this snowfall is going to be difficult.
We're going to have a heavy wet snow, and when we say heavy wet, that's the liquid content in this snowfall. And yeah, that's going to create some hazardous conditions, both as far as infrastructure goes, trees, power lines. You could see even where you get 2 feet of snow on poorly constructed buildings could potentially cause some issues there.
Forecasters say some regions will get between 1 and 2 feet of snow. Several states and cities have declared emergencies. You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News, 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. Parents looking to send their kids to one of the summer camps operated by St. Johns County's Parks and Recreation Department can enter a raffle starting today. Due to high demand for the 4 summer camps, sending your kid to one isn't easy as just signing up. First, you'll have to enter a lottery. Registration for the county's summer camp drawing runs from this morning through 8 p.m. on March 6th. If you're selected, you'll hear from the county around March 24th. That's when you'll be able to see whether you made the cut. For the lucky parents who are selected in the drawing, the summer camps run from June 8th through July 24th. And for more information, visit sjcfl.us/summercamps. Florida Education Commissioner Anastasios Kamoutsas says teachers could be fired if they share opinions that are, quote, anti-law enforcement. He says this extends to content that's shared in class, social media, and in flyers on school property. Kamoutsas has accused teachers of encouraging student walkouts that have continued throughout the state. Those walkouts are in protest of the actions of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE.
We will not allow educators to use the classroom to indoctrinate students in Florida. We will continue to do everything we can do to protect students and ensure that their school time is focused on learning.
The Florida Education Association, the state's largest teachers union, says it does not support the walkouts. It'll be chilly today here in Northeast Florida. Highs only reach the upper 40s to mid-50s with breezy conditions. Tonight, cold air will lead to freezing temperatures area-wide.
Support for NPR comes from the Lemelson Foundation, dedicated to improving lives through invention, innovation, and climate action. And the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people at wtgrantfdn.org.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
He's witnessed every execution in the state of Florida since 1978, and he's been getting a lot busier. Welcome to First Coast Connect. I'm Ann Schindler. Today, we're talking to the reporter known as Dr. Death on the eve of his 107th execution. Later in the program, after a JEA board appointment ends in political embarrassment, Jacksonville City Council President levies damning allegations against the utilities leader. Florida Times Union reporter David Bauerlein helps us break down exactly what's happening ahead of two important meetings tomorrow. But first, John Koch's first execution was of serial killer Ted Bundy. Since then, he's witnessed 105 more. And tomorrow, he will take his familiar place inside the viewing room of the execution chamber inside Florida State Prison at Rayford to see his 107th. He joins us now by video. John Koch, thanks so much for being here.
Yes, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm very well. We mentioned that the first execution that you witnessed was Ted Bundy. Why did you attend that one, and how did it impact you?
Well, that was a long story. In 1979, Ted Bundy came through Suwannee County and dumped Kimberly Leach's body in a shallow grave at the Madison-Suwannee County line. Being a reporter of the area, a broadcast reporter, I picked up on it. I ran with two scanners and was able to listen to the frequencies of several counties. And I heard a lot of chatter with law enforcement going to the Madison-Suwannee line, Ellaville. And I showed up and I was able to be there when the sheriff brought out Kimberly Leach's body in 1979. I immediately called the AP and broke that story. And made a vow that, well, I started this story, I'm going to finish this story. And for a while, it stayed in Suwannee County until it was taken from me. I knew they were never going to seat a jury in Suwannee County, and I knew it was going to move out of here, and I knew I was going to lose it for a while. But I always had this feeling, kind of like I had a nose for news, that it was going to come back to me someday, and it did in 1989 when the warrant was signed for his death, and I knew it was going to be signed for the Lake City case and not the Tallahassee case.
And so you attended, but I guess how did witnessing something like that as a young reporter impact you personally?
It was another story. It was another story. It was something that had to be covered, and that was my job. It's been my job for 53 years, and I don't see any difference in that story as any of the other stories I've done for 52 years. And how I became the reporter, I was just beginning a career, and as an independent, and got a few stories with Florida Radio Network at the time. It's now known as Florida News Network. But Kathy Putnam, a nice young lady that I developed a relationship with, got the assignment from Larry Spillman, who has been my handler for many years. And she said to Larry that she wasn't going to go, and this is a direct quote, but I know this crazy guy in Live Oak that'll go. And that was when history was being made. They found out that I was that good, and they kept me working for the network through all the changes until 2022, when Larry told me the news managers didn't want to use me anymore. And the thing here is news managers. This is a trend that I had been noticing developing in the mid 80s, and finally culminated with the corporatization of our news at the turn of the millennium, and deeper in this area by 2022. There was no independent media in North Florida covering the Third Judicial Circuit.
And you've noticed over time, I guess, that it has ebbed and flowed, I guess, in terms of the attention any individual execution gets. But in terms of a trend, do you think that we're paying as much attention as we once did to executions? And what do you think of sort of our attention or our appetite for paying attention to the pace of or the frequency of executions in Florida?
Well, that's why I'm doing this now, why I continue to do it, even though I'm semi-retired. I will always have to continue to work because of a decision I made 50 years ago. However, it's come down to me and the AP. And when you only have two reporters going in, telling the people of the state of Florida what's being done in their name, that's very dangerous. And I continue to do this out of an obligation to my profession and to the people of the state of Florida, and regardless of being paid or not.
What is that responsibility as you see it as a reporter, conveying what happens inside witnessing an execution?
My responsibility is to accurately reflect and not interpret, and I'm good at it. And I can do it in a short, precise, clear manner, so that you can understand and have enough information to go on your own to make your own decision, so that once you achieve a decision, then we can both together and work on a equal basis for whatever goal we're trying to achieve.
Do you have an opinion on the death penalty?
I'm not going to discuss that at this time. I'm a working journalist on this issue, and I have people that have been with me for a long time, don't know which side of the fence I'm on, and if they figure it out, I'm quitting.
Has your view evolved or changed at all, would you say?
No, it hasn't. It is the law of the state of Florida. And a lot of people are wondering why the governor is doing all this. Well, that's not my job to wonder why he's doing his job. Now, he may have his goals, he may have his objectives, but that's not a part of the story that I do. That's for somebody else to worry about. So I just report on the executions themselves once the warrant is signed.
Would you say that it's had an impact on you personally to see as many executions as you have?
I've seen a lot of violence in my life, and even though it's a very violent thing, no, it doesn't bother me. I've had violence put upon me in many forms, whether it been.
Oh, John, I think we just lost your signal. We're probably going to try to get you back on phone.
And violence is the last refuge of the incompetent.
I think we missed a little of what you said there, John. I know you said that you've had violence in your life, and violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. I'm not sure if we missed something in the middle that you want to add back.
No. You got it. It's just something that I feel is my duty and obligation to do. And no, it doesn't. I put it in its proper perspective.
So we mentioned that you've seen, not virtually, but actually every execution since 1978. And there's been a transition in that period from the electric chair to lethal injection. Can you offer us any insight or perspective as to how that has changed the work of witnessing an execution, or just the realities of how an execution presents to a witness?
Well, we'll take the last use of the electric chair, which I knew was the last use of the electric chair, which was Davis.
That's Tiny Lee Davis, Alan Lee Davis.
Lee Davis, yes. And he was a large man, and when the blood started showing up on the shirt. And instead of telling us, the state telling us that we don't know, we'll get back to you, they started giving us a runaround on that, wouldn't explain why that happened. And that bothered me a little bit, even to the extent that my handler at the time took my first story and said, "No, I'm not taking this. You're too angry. You know, go take a walk around the car or do something and give me another story." I knew that was the last use.
John, what were you angry about? Describe what you're feeling there.
I was angry that the state just wouldn't come clean and say, "We don't know, and we'll get back to you," instead of giving us all that garbage and the runaround. I knew what they were doing. Just tell us you don't know.
Don't know
There's
what?
nothing wrong. We don't know why it happened. We
Okay.
don't know what was going on right now. It was too early in the process to, the execution was less than 20 minutes, 10 minutes, and they're not going to find out much about it until an autopsy is conducted, and some other things. So instead of saying, "We don't know, we'll get back to you," they were just telling us garbage.
So that was the electric chair, and then this transition to lethal injection. Recently there's been some reporting, including a really popular podcast that Malcolm Gladwell did called The Alabama Murders, in which he's looking at whether or not the protocol for lethal injection really is as sort of painless as it is made to appear, or perhaps appears to people. His contention with some research into some autopsies done is that perhaps it is not anywhere near as painless as it appears. Do you have any position on that? Do you have any sense as to what's being experienced?
All right. First thing is that the United States Constitution and the United States Supreme Court said that executions will not guarantee painlessness, but would be humane. Two, they put 200 milligrams of a sedative into you. 100 milligrams, flush the lines, and then you get another 100 milligrams. When you're put under with that stuff for general anesthesia, they're using 0.05 to 0.07. That's 0.07 as opposed to 100 milligrams or 200 total. You're out. You're gone. Your consciousness has left you. You're not aware of anything. So what is left is a reaction, the physical reaction on the body itself. The awareness of the human being, according to the medical facilities and what reading I've been able to do, is you're not conscious. Having had a major procedure, having been put out using chemicals similar to put me under, I can understand that. I'm looking up at the anesthesiologist, and the next thing I know, I'm waking up again.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to reporter David Koch. He has covered every Florida execution since 1978. If you have questions or comments, you can join the conversation by calling 904-549-2937, or you can go to firstcoastconnect.org to find all the ways you can connect with us. We have an email from Mark. Mark is asking, does the guest have an opinion about judicial process that leads to the death penalty? That is, whether the convicted have been given a fair trial or not. David, do you have a position on that?
Well, a lot of people, it takes a long time. The question that I would ask, and it's David, it's John, not David, ma'am.
Sorry about that. I got it in my script wrong. I apologize.
That's quite all right. But getting back to the point is that you are guaranteed a judicial process until the end, and put yourself in that position. You're the one that has been accused, and you're innocent. So do you want any change in the process to prove your innocence up until the end? And the people that I've seen laying there or sitting at the chair at the time have had every opportunity to prove their innocence. We are not England. Within 30 days, you're executed. It is a long and lengthy process, and I don't think it should change. There could be some maybe tweaks to it and more concentration and more priority on death cases. But the Constitution is there and it needs to be followed. And if people don't like it, then they need to push their legislatures to change the laws.
So we mentioned that tomorrow you have your 107th that you're going to be attending. Melvin.
Yes, Melvin Trotter.
Mm-hmm. Tell us, first of all, how do you prepare for a particular execution? Do you do a lot of research into the crime itself? Do you have a routine that you go through?
Yeah, I can give you once a warrant is signed, I issue a story. Now remember, I'm radio, so I don't do a lengthy thing. Just the facts, ma'am. I issue a story to my distribution list that a warrant has been signed. At that point, I start digging into the case to see who this person was, what the crime was, and pick up the appeals process. Now, I used to do a lot of the legal coverage, but I'm leaving that to others that can do it better than I do. So I only do the actual execution itself. I don't spend a lot of time in it. I tell you what the execution was, or why it's going to happen, and some of the facts. But my job is to cover the actual execution itself and what happens in that process. The background, which has probably been done by other reporters, I don't concentrate on that. I just take some of the basic facts to throw it into the story so that you have some kind of a flow of the thing. He's being executed for a 1999 murder of a certain individual, and I don't go much into the details of the crime. It takes up time otherwise. Remember, in broadcasting, time is very important. So you have to keep your reports down to a minute or less in many cases, but no more than a minute and a half. 2 minutes, you're doing a lot of work, and 2 minutes is a lot of time in broadcasting.
Sure. So do you anticipate doing this for the foreseeable future? Do you have an exit strategy? And when you decide to wrap it up, I mean, who would you entrust the work that you do to? Who would you pass the torch to?
Well, one, I'm not going to, as long as I'm reasonably healthy and I can drive, or somebody will drive me, I'll continue to do this because of an obligation I have as a professional news correspondent, and what I think needs to be done. As far as this exit strategy, I have none. I tell people kiddingly and half seriously, if you find me with completing a story, please file it for me.
Well, I appreciate the work that you do, John. I know it's difficult work, and it certainly is time consuming more than ever these days. But we appreciate you checking in with us, and we'll continue to follow your reporting. John Koch, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Up next, has a new era of JEA drama begun? We break down the political developments of the last several days. Welcome back. Well, it's been a whirlwind week of news surrounding the city's water and electric utilities, starting with a failed appointment to the JEA board and followed by a dramatic press conference by the mayor and leaders of JEA on Friday. Here to help us break down just exactly what the heck is happening, we are joined by Florida Times Union Metro reporter David Bauerlein. David, you were at this Friday press conference, and I want to get to it. But first, can you just remind us what led up to it? This was a reaction to a series of news stories that had kind of broken in the days prior.
Yeah, one news story was that Kevin Carrico, the city council president, had appointed the executive director or CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Northeast Florida to the JEA board. There was a text that emerged that
That's his boss.
His boss, Kevin Carrico is the executive at the Boys and Girls Club also. There was a text that emerged that basically said where Kevin Carrico wrote to the current board member, hey, I just want you to know I've got I have a favor I need to give to somebody, words to that effect. And so therefore I'm going to appoint Paul Martinez to this position. And after that text came out, eventually Paul Martinez then withdrew.
That got some blowback, fair to say, right?
It got some blowback. And Paul Martinez just said, I just want to focus on the Boys and Girls Club. That's really where we want to focus. So you had that particular news story. Then you had another news story, which is earlier in the week, last week, one of the board members had talked to the CEO at JEA, Vickey Cavey, about stepping down from her position.
And when did we learn about that? Because I feel like some of this stuff became public knowledge later, but had perhaps happened earlier. So you have Kevin Carrico trying to appoint his boss to the board. Ultimately, that appointment, he withdraws, saying that he wants to focus on the Boys and Girls Club. When did the interaction come between a sitting board member of JEA and the CEO, Vickey Cavey, where he asked her to step down?
So that would have been a week ago Monday when that conversation took place. And then the question is, how much are they related? There's also this other sort of aspect of it where their chief of staff for JEA was dismissed last week. Actually, his position was eliminated, which effectively ended his employment with JEA. And he had talked to a couple of board members about just the working relationship, or how he saw the CEO, Vickey Cavey, operating at the executive level of JEA in terms of management, leadership, those kind of questions.
So this Vickey Cavey's chief of staff essentially having conversations with the JEA board, expressing dissatisfaction with his boss.
Exactly. And right. Raising some concerns, I guess, about how that was happening. So then you have all these different things coming together. And then you had the news conference on Friday where the mayor got up and said that this was being fostered by people who were behind the sale of JEA. And that's where that conference ended up going.
So I want to take a minute and listen to that because, as you said, there was this press conference. It was Mayor Deegan. It was also Vickey Cavey, the CEO of JEA, and the chairman of the board, Joe DiSalvo. We've got some sound from that press conference. It starts out with a little bite from Joe DiSalvo and then the mayor. Let's take a look and a listen.
There is now a calculated initiative to intimidate our CEO and myself into Vickey resigning. All the bogus claims, and I fully expect this disinformation campaign to continue, have no merit and is all hearsay.
This vile smear campaign magically appeared after she resisted pressure to renew a lobbying contract with people who are politically connected to a handful of council members, including our council president. That's when all of this started. These are the same people who were part of the effort to sell our public utility, and frankly, who have been responsible for much of the toxic political culture in Jacksonville that people elected me to end.
So, David, that is the press conference we're talking about. Deegan didn't mention names. She was asked who she's talking about, and she said, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Who's she talking about?
Yeah, so she's talking about Ballard Partners, which is a really big lobbying firm, and they do have a local office here in Jacksonville. And the local office, the partner is former Mayor Lenny Curry. He's a partner here, as well as their office in Tallahassee and Washington. And the managing partner is Jordan Elsbury, who is was the chief of staff and a really high-ranking member of Curry's team during Curry's time in office, his 8 years in office. So that's the reference to his Ballard Partners.
And she's referencing them not only as people who had a contract with JEA that JEA allowed to lapse, but also people who were chief architects of the sale of JEA, the failed sale of JEA.
Yeah, there was an extensive report that really looked at what led up to the sale of JEA, the attempted sale of JEA. Publicly, Lenny Curry was an enthusiastic supporter of JEA putting the utility up for sale. And then the report looked at how he had kind of worked behind the scenes to sort of put the pieces in place for that sales attempt to take place.
And of course, he was never charged in anything, although the CEO of JEA was charged and is currently serving time in federal prison for fraud associated with that failed sale. And the mayor referenced that and said that the fallout of JEA, sort of the machinations that went behind the scenes for the sale of JEA, she said was a large part of the reason that she's in office, that she was elected. She views it as her perspective or her position to end the tone, the tenor, and that attempt, that period kind of put to move the city beyond that.
Right. And I think there was a reaction to that. I mean, it was at that time when she was elected, there was, I believe, the indictments had come down at that point. There was an ongoing investigation and eventually convictions of former CEO Aaron Zahn. And just to make clear, I mean, it's not against the law. There's no law against putting utility up for sale. It was really about some of the side arrangements that would have created this big bonus plan if a sale had gone through for high-ranking JEA executives and really for a lot of employees at JEA.
So I want to just break down a couple of chunks of this story. One is this contract that JEA had with Ballard Partners that they allowed to lapse. The mayor was asked about that, and I'm not sure if it was you who asked her. It was really hard to hear the questions at the press conference, which my plea to anybody who's putting on a press conference is mic the reporters. It would be really nice to be able to hear the questions in addition to the answers. But she was asked about whether or not her administration pressured JEA to cancel that contract or to end that contract with Ballard Partners. And she said she didn't deny that there may have been some contact from her office. She said, basically, I think probably somebody, this is a quote, I think probably somebody from my office expressed surprise that the contract would go to somebody who had played such a large role in the conversations and efforts around the entire scheme around JEA. But there was never any pressure from our side to do anything. What do you make of that? Do you think that somebody from her office expressing surprise about a contract with Ballard Partners amounts to pressure or not?
I would not think that would amount to pressure in and of itself, but that's all it is. Obviously, the backstory on Ballard Partners is when Mayor Deegan was first elected, one of her earliest actions was to cancel a contract that the city of Jacksonville had with Ballard Partners to do lobbying for the city. So no, just expressing surprise, I don't think that would be pressure. And then to add to it, then when Vickey Cavey, the CEO, was asked about who was applying pressure to you to renew the contract, then she said, well, there really wasn't a pressure campaign. She did not view it that way as pressure. So,
she didn't view it as pressure. She was asked about that, and the mayor kind of pressured her to say that she had experienced pressure. She said, don't, cover up for anybody, Vickey. Tell the truth and shame the devil.
Right. And then Vickey Cavey said again, I didn't feel like there was a pressure campaign.
Okay.
So, so there you have it. I mean, the contract did lapse. It didn't sound like JEA really used Ballard Partner for much of anything. And so they just decided not to renew it. And that was back in January, made that decision.
So that's the Ballard Partners chunk of the story. And then you have the fact that you have a board member asking the CEO to step down. This is board member Rick Morales. Earlier last week, he asked Vickey Cavey to step down. Is he allowed to do that as a member of the board? Is that not required to be sort of a collective board proposal or decision? Tell us a little bit about the protocol for that.
I think a board member can go to a CEO, and he is sort of the incoming chairman of the board, or on track to become the next board chairman. And that's the way a lot of these CEO transitions will take place. Somebody from the board will go. Now, he could not go prior to it and talk to his fellow board members and say, I'd like to go talk to the CEO about it, because then you're basically conducting public business outside of the public being able to hear what's being said and discussed. So at that one point, it's a board member, yes, can go to a CEO and say, I think it'd be a good idea for you to step down.
The final chunk of this is the chief of staff position, which Vickey Cavey, the CEO, eliminated on Friday. This has been a position that Kurt Wilson has held since May 2024, but he's been at JEA for longer than that, working as a vice president of government and community relations. So he's been there for a number of years. Kurt Wilson, we know from your reporting and other statements that were made, has expressed some complaints about Vickey Cavey, and she basically fired him or eliminated his position Friday. What more do we know about what's going on there? Because it certainly seems odd that amid all of this, the chief of staff is expressing concerns about her leadership and then just being summarily fired.
Yes. So he had talked to 2 board members, and then after talking to the chairman of the board last week, then his position was eliminated. So, I mean, that's another thread to this, and I think probably that's what we'll be watching most closely when the JEA board meets tomorrow is, what response does the board have to any kind of concerns that Kurt Wilson has raised. Now, Rick Morales has not done any interviews about it, but would expect him to be talking to the board tomorrow as well. So, but yeah, Kurt Wilson is pretty highly regarded. It's within the city government. He worked 25 years for the fire department, became fire chief, and he moved over to JEA in 2020. He did move over to JEA after the sales attempt, so he was not part of the group that actually was involved in the sales attempt.
Would you expect to hear from him tomorrow at JEA's board meeting?
It's very possible. There is a possibility that anybody can go and speak during to the board during a public comment. It's possible he could speak. It's certainly would expect Rick Morales would be speaking to his fellow board members about what he would like to see happen next. And then it'll be up to the board to decide at that point. And then it'd be quite frankly, that's the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to do those kind of conversations in a public setting, in the public board meeting, and then we'll find out what the rest of the board wants to do moving forward.
I do want to read some of what Kevin Carrico, the city council president, had to say. Now, he has yet to give an interview on this subject, as far as I can tell. He has issued about 3 or 4 statements since all of this kind of began snowballing. But most recently, he criticized what he called this frantic press conference on Friday that the mayor called. And he said, what is most troubling is that Mayor Deegan's direct involvement in what is supposed to be an independent authority. JEA was deliberately structured to operate free from political pressure, yet we are now seeing an unmistakable attempt to inject mayoral influence into decisions that belong to its independent leadership and board. When the independence of our public utility is compromised, every ratepayer should be alarmed, especially given the painful lessons from the attempted sale of JEA. Of course, Kevin Carrico is an ally of Mayor Curry, and they support each other. They've been friendly and politically allied. It's interesting to see, who's claiming the mantle of political interference and the history of JEA and the lessons that we ought to learn from it. Because I think certainly there were people concerned about the mayor's influence on board appointments. That's why there was a referendum that changed how the board is appointed. So now there's only 3 seats appointed by the mayor and 4 by the city council. But of course, Kevin Carrico's appointment itself caused some concerns about political influence, reasons for the appointment, what sort of big favor he was giving somebody, as he said in his text.
Yeah, and Kevin Carrico had previously called on JEA to, raised all these concerns that he says he's gotten from JEA employees, said that supported the idea of doing some kind of an investigation of those complaints. So,
And he specifically cited, he said, racism and a toxic work culture.
Right. And so we'll find out maybe some more tomorrow about what exactly the nature of these complaints are that people have been hearing. Now, I mean, I think, the mayor talked at her news conference about how she's been reluctant to weigh in on these things, but she felt like this was a case where she thought there were people trying to hurt JEA. And she felt like it was her job as somebody who had campaigned on the idea of JEA remaining a publicly owned utility that she should speak up when she saw something like that happen.
Right. And to be fair, she did decline to comment when all of this was happening with the appointment that Kevin Carrico put forward and the debate about whether that was appropriate and the favor and all of that. She had declined throughout that to make any comment. If you're just joining us and you have questions about what's going on at JEA, we're talking to Times Union Metro reporter David Bauerlein about the latest developments, both in the last week and in the last I don't know, 72 hours. You can reach us at 904-549-2937. If you have a question, you can also go to firstcoastconnect.org and find other ways to connect with us. We have an email from Martina saying Jacksonville cannot afford to normalize misconduct or political favoritism at any level. We are a growing city with a lot of potential. These political games are exhausting and counterproductive. For the good of the city and to restore confidence in its leadership, Councilman Carrico should step down. That is not anything that I've heard widely expressed in terms of that. But when he was commenting last week, he did say that he was going to introduce a name. And I'm not sure exactly what that was referencing, David. Did it sound to you that Kevin Carrico was proposing introducing a name of someone who might replace the CEO? Or because he said, I look forward to addressing the challenge. I'm currently having conversations with community leaders interested in addressing these challenges and moving our utility forward. I look forward to announcing a name in the coming days, given the disturbing culture observed at our utility.
Yeah, my understanding is he was talking about a name of a board appointee. So his first choice withdrew. So now he still has to fill that position. The current board member in that seat, Arthur Anderson, would like to serve again. It doesn't sound like Kevin Carrico's going down that road of reappointing him to the position. So that's the way I understood it. Not that he was looking for a name of somebody to come in as CEO. That really is a board decision in terms of that part of it. But who he would name as his next choice for the CEO, the board seat.
Good clarity. Thank you. We have a call from former Mayor Lenny Curry. Good morning, Mayor. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning. How you guys doing?
Great.
Good, thanks.
Hey, yeah, I was just calling in. I didn't see the press conference last week, but obviously I've had a ton of phone calls and I've seen the media reports on how it played out. And what strikes me, if you boil this down really into a nutshell, is the mayor called a press conference and made a bunch of accusations. She's lied about me. She's lied about our firm. She's lied about our managing partner, Jordan, over the last few years. And that doesn't matter. But the CEO of JEA basically called her out on her lies in a public press conference and said, with all due respect, Mayor, that didn't happen. So if I'm a citizen and I'm watching this play out, just know that she's just lying. She's just not telling the truth.
What can you tell us about conversations that you or people at Ballard Partners had with JEA before that contract was terminated, Mayor, former Mayor?
Zero conversations. I've never spoken to anyone at JEA. I've been out of office now for 3 years. I was registered to I'm registered to lobby for all the clients that we have since my ban was lifted within the last year, and I'm registered for one purpose only, and that is if I'm in a room and I hear a conversation, I want to be transparent and make sure people know that I hear it. But I could, if Vickey Cavey walked into my office right now, I wouldn't know who she is. I've never met her and never spoken to her.
What were you told about why that contract was ended?
Nothing, zero.
And so
it's one of many.
Okay. And
it's one of many contracts. We have a lot of clients. Business is good. I'm in DC most of the time. So this came out of nowhere. I mean, just completely blindsided me. By the way, I do appreciate the current mayor elevating me and keeping my name ID in the news. I guess that's a good thing, but she's just not telling the truth. And I think, again, the most important piece of this is in a public press conference that she called people the devil. The CEO of JEA said, Mayor, that didn't happen.
Can you tell us anything about, were you involved at all in the discussions that Kevin Carrico had in his nomination for the JEA board? Is that something that you're in communication with the council president about?
Zero, no conversations.
Uh-huh. David,
Kevin's a friend. I probably haven't spoken. It's probably been a month since Kevin and I have talked.
Mm-hmm. David, do you have any questions for the mayor that you'd like to, former mayor, that you'd like to ask him? I'm curious, Mayor, if your thoughts going forward, if you have any feeling about whether this is, troubling, destabilizing for JEA. I mean, till recently your client. Do you have any concerns?
Well, I think this is much bigger than JEA. I think this is a pattern of leadership where it's call a press conference, yell and scream, and make a bunch of accusations. We saw this happen in the beginning when they were picking general counsel. We saw this happen actually when they fired us, and then they did a no-bid contract to a lobbying firm, zero bid for $25,000, I think, a month contract with a firm that has no background in federal lobbying. It's just a pattern of behavior. And you even mentioned in a press conference where they don't even have reporters mic'd up. It's incompetence. It's rash. It is without any thoughtfulness and without any strategy.
Well, I'm going to say that's not unique to this mayor administration in terms of not miking reporters. That's
certainly not how we operated. But
Yeah,
thank you very much. I appreciate you guys taking my call.
All right. Thanks, former Mayor Lenny Curry. Appreciate you weighing in. David Bauerlein, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that was a reference to a part where the mayor had talked about how this was all coming, all the criticism was coming because Vickey Cavey had resisted pressure to renew the contract with Ballard Partners. And then when she was asked to say who was applying that pressure, she said that there was not a pressure campaign. She didn't feel like she was under pressure to do it. And then the mayor was standing right next to her and said, basically tell the truth, be honest. And she repeated again, there was no pressure on me on that particular contract. So, yeah, I mean, that was what she said. And so there's nobody who's been identified as being the ones who were putting this pressure on her to renew the contract.
We've got a call from Steve at the Beaches. Good morning, Steve. Go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to say I appreciate Mayor Deegan bringing this to light. Carrico, of course, should step down. Curry, again, is they're saying he's going to run again for office. Well, the truth will come out, I'm sure, and Mayor Deegan's truth-telling will be certainly substantiated. So thank you for your reporting on this and the death penalty report. Just excellent stuff. I appreciate it.
Steve, thanks so much for your comments. Appreciate it. We also have a call from Tom on the West Side. Good morning, Tom. Go ahead.
Good morning. Just want to say that let's just call this the hypocrisy it is. I mean, they are criticizing the mayor for involvement with the JEA, and at the same time, we have the former mayor, obviously, involved in influencing the JEA. And after what happened with the sale, we shouldn't even have anyone connected with the JEA sale influencing the current policies of the administration.
Tom, thanks so much for your thoughts. I appreciate it. David, in terms of the pressure comment, Vickey Cavey did seem like she was sort of under pressure to make a statement one way or the other on that, and said that she didn't, but she did say, you may, the way that she phrased it was, we may have had experienced a should have, I think was kind of how she phrased it. Sure, there's all kinds of political pressures when it comes to decisions like this, though.
Yeah, it sounded like she sort of said there was maybe a should we conversation. Should we renew this? Should we not? What are the, and you can't read, I don't know how much you can read into that other than it was not the word she didn't use. There was a must do this. It was more thinking through, should we do this or not do this in terms of that kind of deliberation, I guess. And she didn't say who that came from either. I'll just say this in terms of Vickey Cavey's future at JEA. She's been there 2 years. I don't think that from the board's perspective, I would be surprised if the board's going to make a decision anyway on her future at JEA based on the Ballard contract. I mean, this is a small potatoes contract. Obviously, it involves the former mayor and chief of staff are part of it, but it's going to boil down to really, I think, the comments that Kurt Wilson has brought up about her executive leadership.
Take a short break. We'll be back in just 2 minutes with David Bauerlein.
The Florida Theater presents the Three Italian Tenors. This trio from Rome will be singing Italian opera arias and songs in their inaugural United States tour, Wednesday, February 25th at 8 p.m. Tickets and information at floridatheater.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Highway, hospital, home, work. Where injuries happen can make a difference in the law and the outcome.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com. Here Tomorrow provides no-cost, no-wait suicide prevention services in our community. The nonprofit will host its 5-year celebration, A Night of Promise, on March 21st. Tickets and information available at heretomorrow.org.
It's the sound of trust, of calm, of clarity. The sound of WJCT News 89.9, bringing the world to Jacksonville every morning with NPR and local reporting that leads the way.
Jacksonville Today is investigative reporting that breaks news, voter guides, answers to your Ask Jax Today questions, ideas for what to do this weekend, local history spotlights, and a daily piece of uplifting news. We call it the little bit of joy. It's all in the free Jacksonville Today morning email. Sign up at jaxtoday.org.
President Trump's crackdown on immigration has had a real human cost. It also pays those private corporations invested in it. Companies like Deloitte and Palantir have collectively reaped $22 billion from government contracts with ICE and CBP to update IT systems, provide data center staff, and more. Who profits from Trump's immigration crackdown? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, if you're just joining us, we are talking to Florida Times Union Metro reporter David Bauerlein about the recent flood of headlines surrounding JEA, the city's water and electric utility. David, again, thanks for being with us here. So tomorrow, you alluded to, there's a couple of meetings that are happening, starting with a regularly scheduled JEA board meeting tomorrow morning. And in fact, I had talked to you over the weekend about coming on tomorrow morning, and you said everybody's going to be at this meeting. So tell us, first of all, what would you expect to hear given all of the headlines of the last several days?
So I would probably expect to hear something from Rick Morales, who is the board member who spoke to Vickey Cavey last week about stepping down from the position. So I would expect there's going to be something from Rick Morales about why he did what he did, why he talked to her, what he would like to see happen. I think there will be discussion about whatever concerns Kurt Wilson has brought up about the executive level leadership by Vickey Cavey.
Her now former chief of staff.
Her former chief of staff. And then there would be a decision by the board. I frankly would be surprised if there's like a motion to terminate Vickey Cavey or anything like that. But, you know, there could be some discussion about are the concerns that Kurt Wilson's brought up, are those enough to warrant any kind of additional review at the board level of that? And that, I think, would probably be most likely what we're going to see tomorrow at the board meeting. And there's a city council meeting tomorrow as well. You know, that would have been the meeting where they would have been moving forward with public comment on the reappointment of Arthur Adams or the appointment of Kevin Carrico's initial pick. But since that's been withdrawn, it would just be a matter of whether there's any discussion, whether there's kind of an open forum by city council towards the end. And obviously public comments could be interesting too, in terms of who gets up and speaks during the public comment portion of the meeting, to what extent this comes up on those comments.
We did get a comment in our on our emails from Clyde saying we should not forget the incompetent board members appointed by Mayor Curry. One board member had but one part-time job, I think they mean. Another claimed the Fifth Amendment when questioned by the U.S. Attorney's Office. They all resigned. Now the city council president, who receives both a substantial paycheck from a nonprofit that receives city funds and a city paycheck, wants to reward his out-of-city hall boss. Shame. We should say, in regards to the allegations that were made about Vickey Cavey's leadership, she issued a vehement denial specific to any toxic work environment or racism in the workplace. She was very strong on that. And board chair Joe DiSalvo said that the agency had recently undergone an audit of sorts to determine morale and, staff complaints. And he basically said that there was no there when it came to, general complaints about the workplace culture.
Right, which is why I think it'll be very interesting to hear what's said or talked about at tomorrow's board meeting and where the board ends up landing on that. I think it was sort of an agency-wide look at employee relations. What Kurt Wilson, the former chief of staff, has talked about is more in the executive level suite, where the people who directly interact with the CEO would have some experience with what that's like. And you're right, Vickey Cavey was very adamant that she's an inclusive leader. She looks to, bring people in. She was emphatic that in sort of this charge that Kevin Carrico made, that he's heard complaints of a racist work culture, has no place in any way at JA or in how she leads the agency. So extremely emphatic in that point. So again, we'll see if that's, what are the specific nature of the complaints that obviously the JA board would need to hear more about in terms of deciding what steps to take.
And of course, we're talking about political leadership. We're talking about the JEA board and its C-suite. But there are 2,000 people roughly that work for that utility who have probably had more than their fill of negative headlines, political controversies, intrigue. What of them at this point, as it seems like we're entering a new era of at least divisive, allegations and criticism perhaps of the agency and its leaders?
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of like a little bit of maybe deja vu, but Vickey Cavey became CEO 2 years ago when the former CEO, Jay Stowe, was basically asked to resign and ended up a mutual agreement to leave, not over any corruption or any big issues or nothing momentous. It was more like at the leadership level in terms of dissatisfaction. And so she got that position when Jay Stowe was kind of forced out or moved out aside. And so now 2 years later, it's a little bit kind of the same situation arising a little bit. But I think for the 2,000 people at JA, there's going to be a political campaign for mayor, and JA will continue to be an issue in the next mayoral race. I think
oh boy.
Every candidate will be asked, what's your position? Are there any circumstances under whether you would privatize or sell JEA? So that's still part of the lay of the land. And look, if there are complaints about toxic workplace culture, that's always going to be an issue for any independent board.
Well, David Bauerlein, we depend on your reporting. Thank you for covering these issues so well. Thanks for coming on this morning and helping us understand what's happening.
Okay. Thank you, Ann.
All right. Join us tomorrow when we preview a new documentary about Florida's book ban era. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens presents Art in Bloom, uniting nature and creativity with flowers made of glass, ceramics, paper, wood, and even Lego. On display through September 13th. More information available at comermuseum.org.